That night, the rain in Maplewood fell in a fine mist, wind pushing dry branches to knock against my window. I was busy in the kitchen, arranging cans of soup, when a sudden pounding came at the door. Opening it, I saw my son, Jake, standing there. He wore a sharp suit, a Swiss watch gleaming on his wrist, but his eyes were unusual. Behind him was Sarah, his wife, wrapped in an ivory silk dress and brand new high heels, holding a gift box tied neatly with a red ribbon. Jake didn't greet me the way he usually did. He looked straight at me and asked, "Mom, Sarah's been sending you $3,000 every month, right?" I froze. My heart was pounding. For the past 6 months, I hadn't seen a single penny of that money. For the past 6 months, my dinners had been soup from the church and a few loaves of bread from kind neighbors. In that moment, I knew, or at least felt, that something was not right inside my own family. If you've ever had the sudden realization that someone you deeply trust has been hiding something from you, then you already know exactly how I felt at that moment. And if you want to know what really happened, stay with me until the end of this story, because I'm going to tell you everything. I'm Linda Parker, 65 years old, a widow, living alone in the small town of Maplewood, New Jersey. My little house on Franklin Street was once warm and filled with laughter when my husband, Michael, was still alive. He was my life partner, my companion, and my true home. 10 years ago, Michael passed suddenly from a heart attack. Since then, the house has been just me and the silence. In the early days, I learned to slow down, tending to the flowers in the backyard, baking apple pies now and then, teaching Bible study at St. Andrew's. Money was never abundant, but I never considered that shameful. It's just that living costs in New Jersey keep rising, and old age creeps up faster than expected. Jake, my one and only child, had become more successful than I could have dreamed. At 36, he was the CEO of a tech startup in Manhattan, living in a luxury penthouse overlooking Central Park, driving a brand new Tesla Model Y. I was so proud, until I learned how fragile trust can be. That day, his questions sucked the air right out of the room. I thought about cold winter nights when I wrapped myself in 4 blankets because the heater was too old and the electric bill too high. In my fridge, aside from a few cans of soup and some soft apples, there was hardly anything. I had leaned on the church and my neighbors, and I thought Jake knew. Sarah walked in as if it were a stage, her silk dress draped loosely, heels striking the floor with sharp clicks, and the scent of Dior filled my small living room. She smiled. "Oh, Mom, maybe you forgot. I bring you the money every month." I looked straight into her eyes, the eyes of someone who's been through enough to know truth from lies, and replied slowly, "If you did, then it must have gotten lost somewhere." The room fell silent. I could hear the ticking of the clock, the rain outside, and my own heartbeat pounding. For the past 6 months, my life had been simple to the point of scarcity. Mornings starting with the cheapest coffee from the local store, using coupons for groceries and household items, planting a few more vegetables to cut market costs. On cold afternoons, I would sit by my kitchen window, watching the dim yellow glow of the streetlights stretching down Franklin Street, remembering the days when Michael sat beside me, telling old stories. People say living alone brings freedom, but the truth is, long-term loneliness is like a room too quiet, where every sound becomes heavy. Michael used to tell me, "Linda, if anyone underestimates you, don't answer with anger. The truth will speak for itself." I have never forgotten his words, and maybe this is the time to prove him right. This story began on a rainy afternoon with a question that seemed harmless, but it will lead me into a months-long journey in search of the truth, where love, trust, and dignity will all be tested. If you've ever lived a life covered in silence while the truth sat right in front of you and no one dared speak it, you'll understand why I can't let this go. And if you're still here with me, thank you. Stay tuned because what's coming next won't just surprise you. It might make you rethink who you can really trust. After that Mother's Day, Jake's question and Sarah's steel-cold gaze kept echoing in my head. It wasn't about the money. I've lived frugally my whole life. But if Jake really had been sending it, then who was blocking it from reaching me? I knew something was wrong, but if I spoke up right away, I'd only hear meaningless excuses. Life experience has taught me that sometimes, to find the truth, you have to stay still and watch for a long time. The next day, I started paying attention to every detail about Sarah. When she arrived, the gifts she brought, the words she used to cover her tracks. Every month, Sarah stopped by 3 or 4 times. Each time, she looked immaculate, like she'd stepped straight out of a fashion magazine. Slightly curled hair, brand new high heels, designer dress hugging her figure, and a cloud of perfume that could fill the entire room. In her hands, there was always a gift box, fine French cookies, pricey orange marmalade from California, or a bottle of Italian red wine, but never an envelope of cash. These luxurious gifts were pleasing to the eye, but did nothing to replace the dead bulbs in my living room or fix the rusted heater. So many gifts, but real value to my life? 0. One sunny morning in early June, after several days of rain, I decided to drop by Maplewood Bank and Trust to check on something small. Jennifer, the young teller I often saw, smiled and greeted me. But when she heard me ask to confirm deposits from Jake Parker into my account, her smile faded. She typed a few commands, eyes on the monitor, then frowned. "Mrs. Parker, there have been no deposits from Jake Parker into your account in the past 6 months, aside from a $1.75 interest payment in February and a few debit card withdrawals." A chill ran down my spine. If Jake claimed he sent money every month, then where did it go? I left the bank carrying a load of questions, heavy like stones on my chest. Maplewood streets were unusually peaceful that morning. People strolling leisurely, trees lush and green, birds singing. But inside my mind, every sound echoed the same question. If it didn't go into my account, then whose account did it go into? That afternoon, Sarah showed up again, wearing a turquoise dress and bright red Christian Louboutins. A single glance at their price could cover my groceries for a month. In her hands was a bouquet of sunflowers in a crystal vase. "Oh, you're glowing today, Mom. I just came back from the city and thought I'd stop by," Sarah said sweetly. I invited her in and poured tea. When she sat down, I asked casually, almost offhand, "Sarah, the bank told me they haven't received a transfer from Jake in 6 months. Do you think the bank might be having issues?" She hesitated just for a split second, then smiled, lowering her voice. "They must be behind, Mom. I send it every month." I looked at her for a long moment, then replied slowly, "The bank says they haven't seen it. Not even once." Her eyes flickered, a quick blink, lips pressing together, before she abruptly shifted the subject to a new store in Soho where she had just bought a handbag. That night, I took out the old leather journal, a birthday gift from Michael, set it on the table, and began to write. I noted the date, the time Sarah came, what she brought, what she said, and how her eyes looked. Each line was like a clean, sharp slice carved into my memory. I'd worked as an accountant all my life. I knew numbers and dates never lie. Over the following weeks, I quietly kept tracking. Sarah kept coming, kept bringing gifts, but never money. I noticed something odd. Whenever she arrived with an expensive gift, a few days later, Jake would mention that he had sent money to Mom through Sarah. One time, I discreetly checked my debit card's online transaction report. The result? Not a single transfer from Jake. My account remained the same, small and nearly empty. I began to recall Michael's words. The truth is like a compass. No matter how much someone tilts it, it will always point north.
I knew I was facing a story that, if handled wrong, could break the family apart, but staying silent and letting it continue would be far worse. One Saturday morning, I decided to take a new approach. I called Jake, keeping my voice calm. "Son, I'd like to invite you and Sarah over for dinner this Sunday. It's been a while since we've had a meal together." Jake readily agreed, unaware that this dinner would just be the beginning of me pulling back the curtain and letting the light shine straight on their secret. That night, I sat at my desk, organizing all the notes in my leather journal. I marked each day Sarah made promises, each time Jake mentioned sending. Everything matched, but matched in a strange way. Their words always aligned perfectly, except for one thing: the money had never arrived. I closed the book, took a deep breath. The battle to uncover the truth had begun, but I would let them walk right into the trap themselves.
The night before that Sunday dinner, I sat at my desk, my leather-bound journal thicker with every entry. These notes were no longer just bits of random details. They had become a miniature record of the past 6 months. Every time Sarah visited, what gifts she brought, the words she used, and the look in her eyes. Reading it all over again weighed heavily on me, but at the same time, I felt a quiet strength rising. I knew I was only a few steps away from the truth. The challenge was touching it without making Jake shut the door to his mind, defending the wife who had betrayed him. Sunday arrived. I got up early. The kitchen smelled of honey-roasted chicken, buttery mashed potatoes, and apple pie, Jake's favorites. I pulled on a charcoal gray knit dress and pinned Michael's old brooch at my collar. Everything had to feel ordinary. Everything had to make Sarah believe she was in safe territory, with no reason to suspect anything. Right at 6 o'clock, the sound of a car engine came from the driveway. Jake's midnight blue Tesla rolled in smoothly. When the door opened, Sarah stepped out first, the evening light glinting off her pale pink satin dress. Jake followed, carrying a bouquet of white lilies. "Mom, I brought you flowers," Jake smiled, placing them on the table. "Thank you, son," I said, inviting them inside. At first, dinner was peaceful. We talked about the weather, about Jake's work, and Sarah started chatting about a charity gala she had attended in Manhattan. I listened, smiling, but my ears recorded every word and my eyes captured every move. When the chicken was served, I took a sip of tea and asked, my tone light, as if recalling a distant memory, "Sarah, I'm curious, what day each month do you usually send me the money?" Without hesitation, she replied, "The 10th of every month, Mom." Jake looked up, frowning. "No, I set the automatic transfer for the 15th. That's payday for the company." For a few seconds, the room lost all sound. The breeze from the window stirred the curtain, candlelight trembled, and I knew I had just planted the first stake firmly into the ground of the truth. Sarah gave a nervous laugh. "Oh, I must have remembered wrong," then quickly changed the subject. "So, Mom, have you met the new neighbor yet?" I smiled, but inside I was certain. Lies have a reflex to rush toward an escape route, and Sarah had just shown hers. After they left, I didn't feel victory. What I felt was release, a lightness from taking another step forward. I opened my email and wrote to the only 2 people I trusted, Bennett, Jake's company's chief accountant, and Amelia Rowe, my old college friend, telling her that I had found a clear contradiction in Sarah's and Jake's statements. I asked them to start checking all transactions and prepare a precise comparison file. Bennett replied within 2 days. I reviewed the system. There are transfers to an account under the name Linda Parker, but the account number is completely different from yours. The documents opening that account used ID under your name, likely high-quality forgeries. A chill went through me.
But instead of fear, I felt clarity about the opponent I was dealing with. Amelia, with 15 years of experience in financial fraud cases, immediately advised me not to confront Sarah directly yet. Linda, if we press too soon, Jake might side with her. Let her walk into the trap she's building herself. I listened and nodded. This wasn't just about money. It was about restoring my dignity and opening my son's eyes. In the days that followed, I kept writing meticulously. The time Sarah arrived, each gift, how she placed her purse on the table, and how she avoided meeting my eyes. I realized every time Jake said he'd sent money through Sarah, lined up with days Sarah appeared looking glamorous, as if she used the show of gifting to prove an act that never happened. On July 12th, Sarah came with a bouquet of lavender and almost whispered in my ear, "Mom, don't stress. Stress isn't good for your memory." I smiled inwardly. My memory is just fine, fine enough to remember that not a single dollar has reached me. I replied softly, eyes locked on her face. Her expression flinched just slightly before she shifted her tone to cheerful, talking about fall fashion. A week later, Bennett sent me photocopies of bank statements, 8 transfers of $3,000 each into the fake account under my name, all controlled by Sarah. Alongside were company credit card charges from Jake's account for spa visits, shopping sprees, flights. Holding the folder, my hands trembled, but my eyes stayed steady. The truth was no longer speculation. It sat there in black and white on paper. That night, I sat by the window, watching the summer wind stir the trees. Michael's voice echoed in my mind. If anyone thinks you're weak, smile and let the numbers speak. And I knew I was going to let these numbers speak loudly at exactly the right time. The plan began to take shape. I called Jake, inviting them to what I called a charity dinner at my house, explaining that I needed them to sign a few papers for a senior assistant fund. In reality, right in the middle of the table would be a large envelope holding every piece of evidence Bennett and Amelia had prepared. I wouldn't accuse, I would simply place the truth in front of them and wait for the most natural reaction to unfold. That Sunday, Maplewood was covered by a thin layer of white clouds, sunlight filtering through like silk. I woke up early. The kitchen was filled with the rich aroma of beef stew and red wine, the dish Jake used to request every birthday as a child. Next to the stove, I had prepared a large beige envelope labeled in neat, sharp handwriting, Senior Assistant's Fund Documents. Inside were not charity pledges, but every piece of evidence Bennett and Amelia had collected over the past month. Bank statements, forged authorizations, spa receipts, tickets to Cancun, and the Lexus lease agreement. All paid for with the money Jake thought he was sending to his mom, but that had actually gone into Sarah's pocket. At 7 p.m., the hum of Jake's Tesla engine broke the quiet outside. I looked through the window. Jake wore a crisp white shirt, smiling faintly though his eyes looked tired. Sarah stepped out behind him, draped in a navy silk dress, her stiletto heels glittering with rhinestones, a bottle of wine in her hand as if this were a celebration. "Mom, the stew smells amazing." Jake hugged me lightly. "I made it for you, just like old times," I smiled, leading them to the table. Sarah set the wine down, glanced around the room, then sat with the air of someone who believed she was the lady of the house. Once all 3 of us were seated, I said casually, "Before we eat, I'd like you to look at this. Paperwork for a charity project I'm contributing to." I pulled the beige envelope closer, opened it, and drew out the thick folder, placing it right in the middle of the table. One section was already flipped open to reveal the first page. Record of transfers from Jake Parker's account to a fraudulent account under the name Linda Parker. Jake's brow furrowed. Sarah froze just slightly, then forced herself to smile. "Oh, Mom, these papers look serious." I met my son's gaze and said, "Take a look, Jake. This is all the money supposedly for Mom in the last 6 months." Jake pulled the folder toward him, eyes scanning the lines. Date, amount, recipient, Sarah Parker. His face changed quickly, from confusion to shock, then finally settling into heaviness. Sarah, why is the recipient's name yours? Jake's voice was low and rough. Sarah tried to laugh it off. Honey, the bank must have made a mistake. I was just holding it for Mom. I cut in, my voice calm but firm. Not a single dollar here ever reached my account. And here, spa receipts, Cancun tickets, Lexus lease agreement, all paid for with the money Jake thought he was sending to his mom, but that had actually gone into Sarah's pocket. Sarah's face paled. She lifted her water glass, but her hand trembled, making the water ripple. Mom, actually, I only borrowed it. I plan to return it. Jake shoved his chair back, standing, his eyes blazing. Borrowed? For 6 months straight? Borrowed by forging my mom's signature? Sarah, this is betrayal. The room went deathly quiet. I could hear the steady tick of the clock. Sarah leaned in, trying to take Jake's hand, but he stepped back. I only did this so you wouldn't have to worry about your mom. I know you've been busy. No! Jake's voice cut like a blade. No. You wanted my mom to live off church food donations while you spent thousands on spas and luxuries? Sarah breathed heavily, tears spilling, but to me, they weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of panic at being exposed. I was under pressure, she whispered. Pressure doesn't give you permission to steal, I said flatly, placing a gentle hand on Jake's shoulder. Son, the mistake is not that you trusted, it's that someone betrayed that trust. Sarah's voice rose into a near shout. If you want to believe her, fine. I don't need anyone's pity. She grabbed her handbag, stood. The sharp clicks of her heels on the hardwood floor echoed like cold, steady blows. The front door snapped open, then slammed shut, leaving behind an empty space that reverberated through the house. Jake didn't follow. He sat back down, covering his face with his hands, silent. I gathered all the papers back into the envelope, setting it aside. It's done, son. The truth is out. Jake looked up, his eyes full of pain. Mom, I'm sorry. I've been blind. No, it was trust. It's just that it was placed in the wrong hands. When Jake left, I stood by the window. Outside, the wind rose in strong waves, but inside me there was a strange calm. The battle to reclaim my dignity had been won, but it came at a cost. My son's marriage had just collapsed. Michael used to say, justice cuts away what is rotten, but it also takes away some of what we once loved. I believe he was right. The very next day, Amelia called. Linda, I've filed the case with the court. The preliminary hearing is next week. I knew I had to walk another stretch of this road, this time not only to affirm the truth, but to let the law finally close this dark chapter. A week after that dinner, on Monday morning, I opened my mailbox to find a thick envelope stamped with the seal of the Essex County Court, New Jersey. Printed clearly on white paper, Plaintiff, Linda Parker. Defendant, Sarah Parker. Charge, elder financial fraud. My heart sank. I had known this day was coming, but holding that paper still made my chest tighten. Justice was about to be served, but to reach that day, someone would have to face pain. I sighed, then set the envelope down on the table next to the beige folder, still full of evidence. On the day of the hearing, the sky was overcast, drizzle in the air. I wore my gray wool coat and the purple scarf Michael had bought me on our anniversary trip. Amelia walked beside me, her face serious but her eyes giving quiet encouragement. When we entered the courtroom, I saw Sarah at the defendant's table, dressed in a black suit, hair neatly in a bun, her face pale and cold. Next to her sat a young lawyer, looking uneasy. Jake was seated in the back row, his face tired, his eyes deep and hollow. He didn't look at me, nor at her. When the judge struck the gavel to open the session, Amelia stood, her voice clear and sharp as a blade. Your Honor, over the course of 6 months, the defendant, Sarah Parker, opened a fraudulent bank account under her mother-in-law
Linda Parker's name to misappropriate a total of $18,000, money that the plaintiff's son, Jake Parker, believed he was sending to his mother. Amelia placed the evidence on the table one by one. Bank statements, transfer orders, forged signatures, spa receipts, flight tickets. Each page laid down was like a cut, draining more color from Sarah's face. Sarah's lawyer rose to object. "Your Honor, this is simply a misunderstanding in household financial management. Mrs. Parker is elderly and may have misremembered." I tightened my grip on the armrest, but remained silent. Amelia turned, holding up my leather journal. "Your Honor, this is the plaintiff's journal detailing every single day the defendant visited, her exact words, and the gifts given. Every entry matches the transaction data we collected." The judge flipped through several pages, frowned, then called Bennett, the chief accountant, to testify. "I confirm all the data is accurate. The transfers went into an account controlled by Sarah Parker, not Mrs. Linda Parker's account," Bennett stated firmly. When the verdict was delivered, the judge's voice was dry and hard as wood. "The defendant, Sarah Parker, shall return the full $18,000, plus interest and legal fees. The defendant is prohibited from managing or accessing any financial accounts belonging to Jake Parker for 5 years." The final strikes of the gavel echoed. Sarah sat frozen. Tears fell, but Jake didn't look at her. He rose, walking out of the courtroom with me and Amelia. Outside, the rain had turned heavy. Jake draped his coat over my shoulders and after a long silence said quietly, "Mom, I let you suffer too long. I'm sorry." I placed my hand over his. "You don't need to apologize. What matters is that you've seen the truth and you stand with it." In the months that followed, Jake nearly disappeared from society events, dedicating his time to reorganizing his work and cutting useless expenses. He tried to pay me monthly support again, but I refused to take it. I only asked one thing: use this truth to help others like me. We co-founded the Light of Integrity Foundation in Maplewood. The first office was just a small room borrowed from the basement of St. Andrew's Church, furnished with only a few old desks and a second-hand printer. But here, we listened to the stories of seniors tricked into signing away homes, losing their savings, or being robbed of insurance payouts by their own relatives. Jake handled the tech and transparent budgeting. I personally met with clients, wrote letters, and connected them with legal aid organizations. Amelia served as legal advisor. Bennett volunteered to oversee financial case files. Many mornings, as I opened the foundation's doors, I saw eyes filled with suspicion, just like mine had been. And after weeks, those eyes began to soften into smiles. A 78-year-old woman regained her home after her grandson sold it without consent. A veteran recovered stolen pension funds. A widowed mother reclaimed insurance money her daughter had secretly kept. Each case was a wound, but seeing them get their rights back, I knew my own pain had been turned into something useful. That fall, the Maplewood City Council awarded Jake and I the Community Service Award. As I accepted it, I spoke to the silent hall. Never believe that age and kindness mean you must stay silent. The truth isn't late. It only waits for you to be brave enough to speak it. Family life could not return to what it once was. Jake was still healing from his broken marriage, but every weekend he came to the foundation, brewing coffee, sitting with me to sort case files, or visiting the new seniors we'd helped. Sometimes I looked at him, brown hair slightly messy, eyes focused.
and saw the little boy Jake who once asked me, "Mom, what does honesty mean?" Now he not only understood, it's something he lived every day. I didn't get rich from that lawsuit. The $18,000 went into fixing the roof, replacing the heater, and the rest straight into the Light of Integrity Foundation. But what I have today, respect, community, and my son's love, is richer than any sum of money. On New Year's Eve, I lit a small candle on the table, its warm glow casting the shadows of three figures onto an old photo: Michael, me, and Jake at age 5. I whispered, "We made it through, Michael, not by luck, but by truth." Outside, snow began to fall quietly. In my heart, I knew the journey had closed, but a new path had opened, one where the darkness of deceit could never reach me again. A year after the verdict closed, Maplewood stepped into spring. Sunshine draped over the cherry blossom trees lining Franklin Street, and the lavender bushes I'd planted the year before now bloomed fully, their fragrance drifting softly into every corner of my home. I sat at my desk by the window, a steaming cup of tea in hand, looking out at the Light of Integrity Foundation, which now had 2 additional offices in Newark and Jersey City. Each week, we helped dozens of seniors who had been victims of fraud. Jake was in the Newark office that day, guiding new volunteers through the process of securing financial accounts. Some nights, I still remember Mother's Day evening. The question Jake asked, Sarah's polished smile, the overpowering scent of expensive perfume filling my small living room, and the hollow feeling when I realized I'd been left behind. Those memories no longer hurt my heart, but they stayed. A reminder that trust is precious and must be placed carefully. Reverend Collins at St. Andrew's Church often asked, "Linda, have you truly forgiven Sarah?" I smiled softly. Perhaps I have, because I don't wish her harm. But forget? No. The betrayed can forgive, but they will never forget. He nodded, his eyes warm with understanding. You're still the strong Linda I've always known. One morning, Amelia brought an envelope from the Elder Justice Fund, the organization that once supported our foundation, informing me they wanted to sign a long-term partnership agreement. As I looked at the document, I felt both proud and humbled. Who would have thought that a woman who once lived on church food donations would now help hundreds reclaim their dignity and their lives? Still, on quiet nights, I thought of Jake. After his divorce, my son lived alone in a small apartment in Morristown. He rarely spoke of the past, but his constant presence at the foundation told me he was searching for something. Maybe redemption, or maybe just a way to let his heart heal. I didn't rush to repair everything. As a mother, I had learned that sometimes silence is the best way for a child to find his way home. One rainy October evening, as I was packing case files at the foundation office, the door opened and Jake came in. Coat soaked, hair slightly messy. "Mom, I brought you coffee," he said. I took the cup, feeling as if I'd been handed the warmest gift in years. We sat together without speaking for several minutes, just listening to the rain tapping on the roof. Then Jake spoke quietly. "I don't even know how to thank you for showing me the value of truth." I smiled, placing my hand gently on his shoulder. "It wasn't me who showed you. You found it yourself when you walked through the pain." Jake began taking on more at the foundation, joining counseling sessions, advising on account management, designing awareness campaigns about family financial fraud. Watching my son work with focus and dedication, I saw again the little boy who had once asked me, "Mom, what does honesty mean?" That winter, I received a letter from the New Jersey State Women's Council. "Linda Parker, congratulations. You have been nominated as Woman of the Year for your work in protecting the rights of senior citizens. The ceremony was held at the New Jersey State House. I wore a simple light blue dress, walked on stage to thunderous applause, and looked down to see Jake in the second row, his eyes gleaming with pride. I began my speech. I once thought that when betrayed, silence was the best revenge. But I've learned that when someone steals your trust, reclaim it with truth. No shouting, no hatred, just truth. Because truth holds a power that no punishment can match. The applause was long and warm. After the ceremony, Jake draped a coat over my shoulders and said, "Mom, you truly shine today." I held his hand, not because of the award, son, but because you're here, understanding the meaning of honesty. We walked out into the light rain. That New Jersey night was cold, but inside me was a deep, abiding warmth. My life now is neither loud nor extravagant. It's quiet, full in the gentlest way. Every morning, I open the windows to let the sunlight spill in, brew a pot of tea, and begin my work at the Light of Integrity Foundation. I'm not afraid of poverty. The days standing in line for church food donations taught me that self-worth doesn't lie in how much money you have, but in how you rise after a fall. One quiet afternoon, I sat down to write a letter, but didn't send it to anyone. "Sarah, thank you for taking everything from me, so I could learn that the most important thing isn't holding on, it's knowing how to stand again." I placed the letter into Michael's old wooden box, alongside birthday cards and a note he once wrote. Truth doesn't need to be shouted, only lived. When I closed the box, I knew this chapter of my life was done, but the road ahead was open, and I would walk it with gratitude, not with burden. If someone asked me the secret to finding peace after betrayal, I'd say, let truth be the light that guides you, and let your memory protect you from the dark. Outside, the lavender swayed lightly in the spring wind. I whispered to myself, "Michael, if you were still here, you'd be proud. Not because the money was recovered, but because I've kept the strength you loved, the strength that refuses to let anyone else define my worth." And if you're sitting somewhere right now in your quiet room listening to my story to the very end, I want to thank you, because every listener is proof that truth still has a place, even in a noisy, hurried world. If you have ever faced betrayal, don't stay silent forever. Tell your story. Your voice today may help someone find hope tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment and share your own experience. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next stories where truth and honesty always have a place.